Hello, Mike and Corey here today, this last day of the second quarter. And really, we're right in the middle of the summer, but it's hard to believe we're halfway through 2025. And it's been quite an adventure to get halfway through 2025. But the good news is, after the big sell off we had on tariffs and all that, we are cracking new all-time highs. So we're seeing them day over day highs. And Corey's going to talk about that as far as the sequence. Like what happens is you may not see an all-time high for a while, and then all of a sudden you'll see a bunch right in a row. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about something else that kind of comes out of tariffs, which is the negotiating factor, where Trump dealt with Canada, and basically Canada wanted to do some things, and Trump said no, and they actually backed down, which is a good thing. Um, and then finally, I'm going to talk about big news, at least if you're in Congress, but big news does too. The tax cuts, or hopefully we'll see some tax cuts. We'll always take those. So as we get started, this is a financial education presentation. You must do your own due diligence on anything you hear in this presentation. More disclaimer information can be found on ankerstarwealth.com, and the opinions expressed are mine and Corey's alone. So let me start off because we love green. We showed green last Friday, hitting highs, and then the markets are up just a little bit more today. Nothing all that exciting, but I do like the headline that says S&P rises to another record to wrap up the second quarter comeback. And for those of you that tune in next week, the week after, actually be July 10th. That's when we'll do our third quarter update and hop on and talk about where the markets are. The good news is it's a lot more fun when they're up. It's much more painful, at least for me, when they're down. But they eventually always have went up in the past. So one thing I saw this come out earlier today, Canada wanted to have a digital services tax on the United States, and Trump said, nope, we're not doing that. If you do such a thing, we're not going to negotiate. We're not going to work with you. We're just going to shut everything down. And you know what Canada said? We changed our mind. So this is a residual effectiveness out of tariffs and negotiating. So right away, Canada backed down, which we're not trying to say who's the bigger one, or what. We're not trying to get credit between countries, but it just says, hey, we're going to all play a fair game now. So I see this kind of as a residual good effect from those tariffs that were so painful earlier. And right here it says Trump threatened to cut off all trade talks with Ottawa in retaliation for the tax. So, and the article basically says this can be used with other countries, and that certainly is true if they're dependent on the United States. We'll see this, which I don't want to say everybody's dependent on the United States, but a lot of countries are. The other big news out is this passed through the Senate, or let's see, how's this going? It goes through the Senate, it goes through the House, goes back through the Senate to eventually get what, I'm not a big fan of this big, beautiful bill. Like, I don't know. I can't think of many things in mathematics and taxes that are beautiful. They're certainly big, certainly expensive, but the extension of the 2017 tax cuts will be nice. And I know there's some other things in there having to do with state and local taxes, getting shouldn't say uncapped, but the cap moving from 10,000 to 40,000, and a lot of things have to happen. I will say this is occurring faster than I expected it would. I thought this would take a little bit more into the fall to get this done. I will be shocked, pleasantly shocked, I think, if it all gets passed and approved and we move on to the next thing. And I'll just say, in the first 6 months of this presidency, we've seen a lot of things happening, from tariffs to deportations to the big, beautiful bill. I can't even imagine what we're going to see next. So anyways, I consider this, good news that it's moving forward. it doesn't seem like there's a massive split. Like, sometimes they fight about these for weeks and weeks and weeks. So far, so good. And it'll take us into the fall. So one of the things that you get is the last couple of days we've hit all-time highs. And then of course, the previous, whatever, 3 or 4 months, there was no highs because we were sold off. And I wouldn't be surprised if we hit more highs over the next, whatever, month, 2 months, however it goes. So it's kind of like a sequence. And Corey's going to talk about that today. So I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, and Mike, I don't know when Elon was going on his social media rampage a month or so ago that got his stock in some trouble for about a day. But he said the line he used, which I just can't get out of my head, was, you can have a big bill, you can have a beautiful bill, but you can't have a big, beautiful bill. That's not, it's just, at some point, it's just not true anymore. It's not true. Yeah, so this is one of the, there's like over time, right? Finance, social media space gets every once in a while like a relic that it gets posted and reposted year after year, time after time. And this is one of the most famous ones that exist out there. So this post was, we expect markets to provide 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 equal, up to 7, whereas markets actually provide 2 - 1 + 1 + 2 + 2 - 2. So, it's a bumpier ride there, right? And when you're getting those bumps down, or those little corrections, resets, it can take some time to recover, but then again, that recovery comes with its own momentum and narratives that can drive things even higher. So he says we expect markets to provide a linear returns. Markets always provide lumpy returns. Most of the investors miserably fail to understand this. So here at Ankerstar Wealth, we want to understand and take advantage of this. And we've got the video from a few months ago showing how dollar cost averaging during those painful moments is like supercharging your returns over the next 12 months and so on. And he says that's why wealth creation is difficult there. So here we've got a chart. So Mike, every one of these blue vertical lines shows a new all-time high in the S&P 500 going back to, just before or right at the beginning of 2020. So you can see starting at the beginning of 2020, we're having new highs every week, right? Some of them you'll see get kind of thick. There may be 3 days in a row where you hit like new high, and then you can take a week off and recover. And then you'll get these periods where the market takes a dip, and that's your buying opportunity, right? When you see these big white windows in here, that's the time where we want to take advantage of the volatility and position ourselves for the move back higher. Now, some of them are longer than others. The 2022 to the end of 2023 or beginning of 2024 period without a new all-time high, somebody could get caught a little bit. What am I trying to say here? Somebody could get a little bit self-defeated in a cycle like that, where it really takes some serious time, more than a year, to get new all-time highs. But then what had happened once we got back to all-time highs? You're seeing them hit. So new highs happen in clusters, and they also, they can take gaps in between those clusters. Well, we had a gap this year. I think we got Liberation Day there, with was about the end of that, and then we sold off and took up until June to recover, and we did achieve another new high. So we could see a cluster of new highs here. Still probably expecting some consolidation in and around the S&P 500 6,000 area, but we did achieve those all-time highs, and they could cluster from here. So don't be surprised if you see 3 or 4 or 5 or maybe 10 more of them happen in the next 2 months as that momentum kind of finishes itself off here to the upside. Anyway, Mike, that's all I've got.
Yeah, and I mean, it's always people say, it's common sense, like, oh, I want to I want to sell the highs and buy the lows. But it's not that easy. I mean, if you knew what it was, right? If you knew it was the low, you would absolutely buy it. But take back to like 2021, and if you got like, oh, we hit a few highs, and I'm gonna like go back early, like October, October, November
Mhm.
of actually of 2020, and
20.
and if you thought, oh wow, we hit some highs, I better sell out because we're at the high, you just missed those gains. And the hardest part is, so how do you buy back in? Like, if you see the market go up 5 or 10%, you sold out because you thought you were at a high, and it goes up 5 or 10%. It's really hard to pull the trigger to buy back in because you're locking in, I missed it. And so that's why, it's just better to stay long term in the market and don't not try
Yeah.
in any kind of a market timing game. So
Yeah. And just accept that you're gonna get, hey, those new highs will come, and then there might be a gap in between for a while, and that's
mhm.
okay. And then they will come back. So
Yep,
you don't want to get too down just because you have to wait 3 months in between, right?
that's true. Well, that's what we have for you today. I'm sure there'll be more exciting news tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.